Good evening and welcome to the last evening of the 10th Annual Regulators and Policymakers Retreat being held by Aviation Watch and IPPI here in Goa. With me, I have Mr. Sanat Kaul. Welcome to the show, Mr. Kaul.
Thank you.
Sir, you are the chairman of IFAD, the India chapter, and you have been the Indian representative to ICAO, the international organization which implements standards and regulations in civil aviation, so to say the world regulator of civil aviation. So we'd like to know just how far is Indian aviation in conformity to international standards in safety and security of aviation?
Okay, before that, may I take a few words to introduce what IFAD
Sure,
and
sir.
ICAO is all about,
Sure.
and then I'll tell you. ICAO is the International Civil Aviation Organization. It is a body of practically all the countries. Maybe all the members of the UN are maybe too short. And this body was formed by the Chicago Convention of 1944, and it is actually the regulator and the lawmaker both. It makes all the air laws there. The council in which I was there makes all the air laws, and it also in a way regulates. The regulation is a little not so strict because of the international law concern, but it has framed standards and practices, recommended practices, and it does audits. Now, as far as International Foundation for Aviation and Development is concerned, it is an NGO which was started in Montreal. It is based in Montreal, but it has an India chapter, and we also do our own programs. The foundation is supposed to be an active NGO looking into various aspects of aviation and development. Insofar as the audit is concerned, it is only recently, last 5-6 years, that safety audit started in ICAO on a voluntary basis. All countries, all member countries agreed to have a audit, more so after 9/11. And after that, security audit also started. So between safety and security audit, the ICAO is now a regulator which does audits of countries and gives reports. Earlier, the safety report was confidential between ICAO and the country, unless the country itself wanted to put it on the website. Now, slowly and slowly, it is getting fully open and anybody can visit it. It looks into various aspects of safety. In the annexes are the rules which govern law, and earlier it was only 3 major annexes which govern safety. Now, any annex, there are 18 annexes, and any annex which has a safety reference is looked into by this audit. Audit is done of all countries over time, not every year. Maybe it will take 2-3 years to come back to that country because there are so many, nearly 100 countries. But it does that. India's audit has been done more than once, and they pointed out deficiencies in various sectors of India's safety audit.
Right. So the feeling in the market or the story in the market goes that the DGCA does not have enough personnel on the ground to actually audit this vast number of aerodromes that we have in the country, and some of which are actually unremunerative, but they are aerodromes from which 1 or 2 flights do take off. So how do we ensure that the economies really work out? We do maintain some air links with important areas, no doubt, but we actually managed to shut down airports that are actually non-remunerative, and enforce this entire scheme so that all the mandatory requirements of ICAO are met.
I think there are 2 issues which you have taken up. One is the issue of remunerative airports. Well, Airport Authority of India was constituted by an Act of Parliament, and all the airports in India were entrusted to them. They cross-subsidize. They had about over a dozen airports which are remunerative, and the rest are subsidized by the profits. And Airport Authority was declaring 20% profit and 20% income tax. So it is a profitable body. Now with having leased out 2 airports of Mumbai and Delhi, they're still, in fact, I'm told that the receipts of the profit that they get from these lease are more now. It's gone up. So in no way can I say that they are worse off. The idea to improve 35 airports is there, and if it costs money, it costs money. The capital cost is always high in improving airports.
Right. So why this controversy, sir, with the user development fee being levied on passengers?
No, that is something, you see, you never put a fee before the activity is complete. You can't put a toll on a road before the activity is complete. So it is being done in advance. That is the controversy. No, but I'm coming back to the second part of your question about DGCA and not having sufficient staff to implement the safety. Now, DGCA is the safety regulator for India. And as traffic grows, they should provide more inspectors. The system under which DGCA is stuck, the government system of recruitment, use of public service commission, an excruciating process in which interviews are held, it takes about a year. You can't really give justice to DGCA because unless they are able to recruit fast and pay remunerative salaries, they will always have a problem. More so when there is a demand for technical people and they will not wait for the whole long process. They will probably get a better job, better salary and go somewhere else in the private sector. So it is for the government to decide how to manage such technical personnel who have a market value, whose initial market value is even higher than what they are offering. And if there is a question of wait, they may not even wait that long.
So, coming to the economics of running an airline, we have seen that an iconic airline such as Pan Am was allowed to die by the US government after the Lockerbie incident when they could not make good their losses and come out of that accident. Why do nations still cling on to this feeling that we should have a national carrier and subsidize it or prop it up with public money?
I don't agree with you. I don't think nations cling to this thing. It's only in India that there is some sort of unnecessary nostalgia. Firstly, Air India was a private airline. It became a government airline. It can go back as a private airline. It was being done in 2001.
Right.
It was practically handed over to a private joint sector, a private strategic alliance, through a private strategic alliance. It was unfortunately they were not able to complete it, and 9/11 took place. Then all airlines withdrew. And one of the conditions was that a foreign airline could be a partner. We still have opportunity to strategically disinvest. In my view, Air India will not be able to function unless 51% of the ownership is outside the government into private sector. Because there are so many handicaps in running a public sector undertaking. And Air India, which has to compete and be very sensitive, and it's practically like a hospitality service, like a hotel. You have to run on time, you have to have good service, and they will not be in a position to match the quality provided by private sector. And this is not to say that public sector can't do it. The public sector, other countries do it, but Indian government has got embroiled its public sector into so many rules and regulations, and the flexibility is gone, that I think we can really not hope for government to improve itself, but for
Private people.
airline to go private, and then it can compete.
So finally, sir, what do you think is the way out of this current mess that airlines have landed themselves in? The economic problems.
Are you talking about Air India or
Kingfisher, Air India, all these airlines?
Well, it's a financial issue. I mean, the shipping sector and the airline sector goes through all these motions. It's a cycle. And I think as far as Kingfisher and Jet and other private airlines are concerned, they'll have to come out of it somehow. You have to know what they call the feeling of exuberance, and then you start buying aircrafts when you're doing well and not accounting for the days when things harden up. It's a mistake which they have done.
So only the strongest will survive, and they should survive.
I suppose so. There's no other way out.